Great branding. What makes a great business name? When you're thinking about creating your company's new name or business name, you really want to put a lot of thought into it. Think about some of the most iconic brands in the world: Starbucks, Nike, Netflix, Google. What do all of these companies have in common? They have names and they have brands and logos that are memorable, right? So when you think about Starbucks, for example, picture it. What do you visualize? You can probably visualize their products, their logo, maybe the interior or inside of one of their locations. So think about all of this as you start to create your own company, your own brand. All of this is extremely important. If you're serious about creating a business, you should put a lot of thought behind not just your name, but everything that stands behind it: the branding, the visual identity, the story. A lot of people or entrepreneurs, especially first time entrepreneurs, get really hung up and stuck on the business name. And this can actually hinder or stop you from moving forward or even executing or doing anything at all. So, this guide, this process will take you through what goes into great branding and a great name. And the first part is that ideation phase, right? This is the first part of every entrepreneur's journey of having a thought or an idea in their head of what the business is. And then naturally, the next step is trying to create a brand name or a company name behind it. So in this phase, when you're coming up with an idea, your idea can be more than just the name of a potential business, right? It could be ideas that are popping up in your head, ideas about the business. I highly encourage, while in this ideation phase, to take a lot of notes and write down some of your ideas, because that can turn into your actual business name. That brings us into the next step. It's, what is your actual business? What is your proposed business? Who's the target market? Think about what your concept is. If it's a restaurant, what type of restaurant is it? Is it a pizzeria? Is it an Asian restaurant? Specify it and narrow it down even further. Is it a full service restaurant? Is it quick service? Is it pickup only? What's the ambiance like? Are you going to have outdoor dining? Right? So as you start to think of your business, write down all of your ideas. And more importantly, think about who your target market is. Who is your demographic? When we think about good branding, we really have to connect and identify with who our target market is. Who's our demographic? So you really have to understand who your customer is. And when you think about your customer, think about, do they exist right now? Right? Are you trying to sell food to a customer? In this case, most people eat food, right? And you can specify and narrow that down even further. But what if you had a startup idea, right? What if you had the next Uber idea? Who is your actual customer? And how do you find out who they are? These are things that you really want to think about before you pick your brand name, because your brand, your company name has to identify with that particular customer. The most important thing is narrowing down and figuring out your actual niche. So when you narrow down and figure out your actual niche, it's really going to help you identify who your customer is and really figure out what the product and services are that you can provide to your actual customer. Most entrepreneurs make a mistake and say that their customer is everyone. And naturally, that's never true. So the more that you can identify, the more that you can narrow down who your actual customer is, the better chance of success you'll have in your business. So this is very, very important in terms of creating a good customer, creating a great brand name that identifies with your customer, is really understanding who your customer is. So the next part of the process is creating your actual business name. Your name is everything, right? You want it to be memorable. You want it to identify what your brand is. So when you think about this, try to be original. I'm a really big fan about unique names that are so creative that nobody has it. Think about Google. Think about Hulu, right? Some of the strategy of why a company creates a very unique name like that is because they won't have any type of conflict in the future with trademarks or confusion with another brand. For example, let's say you start a pizza restaurant and you name your pizza restaurant Domino's Pizza Restaurant. Obviously, there's a huge conflict of interest with Domino's Pizza. What if you name your pizza Brothers Pizzeria, right? How many Brothers Pizzerias are there in the world? If you Google it, you'll probably find a million of them. If you made up a word and put it in front of pizza, like Google Pizza, if Google didn't exist, you'd probably have a better chance of creating a brand that's super unique. So when you're creating your identity and your business name, think about all these factors and think about creating something that's so unique that nobody else has that name. It's another thing when people search for your business or they're on Google and you have a brand name that's so unique, your customers will be able to find you better, right? If you had a really generic name like Brothers Pizza or, really great pizza, people will have a hard time finding you when you're searching in Google. A really good exercise is to actually search your proposed business name in Google or search businesses in your area that are similar and see what comes up. Now, once you're able to come up with a business name, the next step is putting it all together. And that's what your brand identity is. It's not just a name. It's not just your logo, right? There's other things that consist of what your actual company and brand is. A lot of times, the difference between a successful company and a company that's not successful is the brand that they've created, right? It's why are some people more loyal to Starbucks than Dunkin' Donuts? Why are some more people very loyal to McDonald's and Burger King? It's because they've created strong brands that the consumer is attached to. And these are things that you want to think about. Now, what consists of a brand identity? There's several elements. There's your visual elements, which can be your logo and your design, your color scheme. If you're a physical brick and mortar location, such as a Starbucks, it can be your interior design, right? And then there's also your story. What is your brand story? What are you telling your customers and what are they identifying with? And what is your brand voice? A voice is a tone that you come up with on how you communicate with your customers. Are you communicating them in a very professional manner? Or is it something more laid back and casual? If your customers, let's say millennials, are you communicating to them like you're a millennial? So these are all elements that you really want to think about when you're creating your company and your brand. Last but not least is your logo. Okay. That's probably the last thing you want to think about. It's what is the visual identity of your actual company and brand? As Paul Rand says, a logo doesn't sell directly, it identifies. You want something so iconic and unique that when people see it, they know right away that it's your brand, right? Think about some of the most iconic brands in the world, and how when you think about it, you can think about their logo right away. Think about your favorite companies right now. McDonald's. I'm sure you can picture, the golden arches. Starbucks, they don't have as iconic of a logo, right? You probably can't picture it off the top of your head. But think of something like Google. Google you see almost every day on the internet, right? Apple, Nike. Nike probably has one of the most memorable logos in the world. It's a swoosh. It's very simple. So as you're thinking about creating a new company and a name, think about all of these elements that you want to put together: the name, the brand identity, the visual elements, your voice, your brand story, and last but not least, your logo.